Is there salvation outside the church? You know, in the last video, we learned about the divine mercy of God. And in particular, I gave the example of the boy who is in great need and how in our own love for him, we sent a package to him through the post office. And in the same way, the church is like that post office, where Jesus gives to us this special gift that is his divine mercy, and we receive it, right? But in order for us to receive it, we go through the church in order to receive it, through the sacraments, through all the sacraments, and especially the Holy Eucharist and the sacrament of penance, right? Reconciliation. We'll talk about sacraments in a different video, but you know, sometimes when I share this idea of the divine mercy of God and how Jesus will that we receive his mercy through the church, right? The church is the channel in which we receive it. Whenever I share that, I always get people who ask, well, wait a minute, what if I'm not a person who go to church? What if I'm not, someone who believes in Jesus, right? They might say, for example, well, what about the Buddhists, the Hindus? What about those who are spiritual but not religious? Now, this is a very interesting concept because the Second Vatican Council speaks of this very idea, speaks of the term sacramentality. Again, the term is sacramentality. It's a concept that speaks of our ability that through the senses, right, through nature and through everything that we see out there, it leads us upward into the divine, right? So the sacraments flow from the very body, right, of Christ. And the sacrament is received through the church, right? It flows through the church. We see sacramentality as God being able to work well beyond the confines of the seven sacraments. In other words, we don't put God in a box and say, well, God, you can only work through these seven sacraments. No, God can work well outside this box. So the idea of sacramentality is that our senses, our human senses, our will, our intellect, it allows us to contemplate deeper, right? To recognize the divine creator, which is God himself. So the question then is there salvation outside the church? And the answer is yes. Yes, there is. In part one, we've explored the divine mercy of God, and I gave a very clear example that helps us to better understand what the divine mercy of God is. Now, I'm going to answer this question even clearer and deeper. So there is salvation outside the church. But in order to fully understand this response, you need to go back, right, and explore part one, which is on the divine mercy of God, right? I explained all of these things. And so we see there is salvation outside the church, but it's all through the mercy of God, right? The mercy, the divine mercy of God is meant for everyone. God offered salvation for everyone. But here's the problem. You see, all of us are meant to live in communion, right? Communio, which means in community. So Jesus formed the community that is the church. And Jesus Christ handed the keys to Peter and says, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, right? And so the prevailing problem with someone who says, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, or I don't believe in any religious institution, is that anyone who says that claims that they have their own spirituality and that they can arrive at God through their own spirituality. The answer is, with this, can it happen? The answer is yes, it can. But it's very difficult in order to arrive at that, if not impossible. So let me share. Let's say, for example, you have a certain form of spirituality, and over time you change and things change, and so you create your own rules, you create your own laws, you create how you're going to follow God. And sometimes, in the back of our minds, we always say, well, God is loving, God is merciful, and he's merciful to me anyway. So, I'm just going to go enjoy life and do whatever I want, right? But keep in mind, as we're doing that, it draws us further and further and further and further away from God, right? Without us even realizing it. See, that's one of the biggest challenge of being spiritual but not religious. You see, the problem of why there's so much fragmentation, especially in the Christian communities is because of this very precise issue. You see, some people say, well, I believe this and this and this, but I don't believe that. And then some people say, well, I have my own spirituality and I'm going to go this route. And I get to decide my terms. I get to decide what my conditions are. I get to decide what rules to set, right? And when these things happen, what you come to realize is that over the course of time, it leads us into a different direction. So that's a big problem. So the short answer is, yes, there is salvation outside the church, but the biggest question is, are we able to attain it outside, right? It's very difficult because there is divine mercy outside. God can work well beyond the confines of anything. But we have to recognize too that we need community. We need God in our lives. So once again, go back to the first video, what I shared about the divine mercy of God. God can do many things, right? And if you look at this example, you can see that this boy has the option. He can decide to go or say, well, I'm going to go to the post office and I'm going to ask for what is given to me, right? My gift, right? Because it has his name on it. Or, think about it. That boy can just say, yeah, you know what? I'm not interested. I'm just going to leave that there and that's it. I don't want to deal with it anymore, right? Well, that's a problem. Why? Because in real life as well, God gives each one of us the choice, the ability to choose if we want to accept his mercy or not. God's mercy is for all. Whether or not we want it is up to us. You see, some people live closer to the post office, some people live further away. In the same way, some people live closer to church, further away. Here, I'm not talking about distance. I'm talking about our relationship precisely with the church and with God, right? And so here we see this fundamental concept of freedom. The boy is free to choose whether he wants this gift or don't want this gift. And we're all thinking, well, obviously the boy's going to take that gift, right? It's a free gift. Why not? Well, in the same way, God gives to us the free gift, the greatest free gift. And that gift is the gift of his divine mercy. Do you want it? That's the question God poses to us. So now, when you think about the divine mercy of God, when you think about God's great gift to us, he gives it to us, yes, but he gives it to us through the church, right? So we come to the church and we ask for God's divine mercy, and the church dispenses it for us, right? Certainly, there are conditions as well in order for us to meet them, so then we can receive God's divine mercy. But you see, if you have that willingness to receive God's gift of mercy, right, you would do your very best to go through the proper channel in order to receive God's mercy. So with all that being said, let's do a quick recap. So God freely, right, he freely gives to us his divine mercy, but he gives us his divine mercy through the church. And we receive God's divine mercy by making an active and conscious effort to go out and to get it, right? It's there for us, but in order for us to get it, we have to come to it, right? So God never forces any gift upon us. He gives it to us. Whether or not we want it is up to us. And if we want it, we have to go and we have to get it. It's freely given and it must be freely received. That's God's gift of the divine mercy of God. The question is here, are you willing to receive God's divine mercy? May God bless you.